Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our school board workshop, going over our school board policies, October 24, 2023. Today, we will be going over almost 28 policies, which is quite a bit, but I feel like we can go through a lot of these. A lot of these really go over, they're making sure that we are updating and also with language, as well as making sure that we're abiding by state law. So we've had 3 weeks for these binders, and I want to thank Kristen Davis and her team for putting this all together. And so we look forward to today. And just know if we're not able to go through all of these, we do have another date ahead, November 9th, that we could complete these. But hopefully we can get through a lot of this today. I'll go ahead and hand it over to our superintendent, Mr. Ayers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have full confidence that we'll be able to get through these policy revisions today. So just to kind of level set everyone here. So we had, if we remember back to the August 1st policy workshop, within policy, it is part of our staff's process to review policy. So since August 1st up to today, we have reviewed 137 policies. So, you know, kudos to my team for all the work in reviewing policy. In the very back, you'll see all of our policy and you'll see review dates. So of those 137 policies, 112 of them were reviewed and needed no changes. So you will not see any of those today because those were reviewed and need no changes, and then they're in the very back, and they'll just say reviewed next to them. So kudos to the team for all that work with policies and reviewing all of those 112 that need no changes. Now, what's in front of you today, we have 28 of them. 25 of them were part of that policy revision process and require some sort of revision that needs to be done. So we are bringing those to you today. I'm confident a lot of these are just small changes, so I'm very confident that we should be able to move through these pretty quickly today. But of course, you know, we're here to answer any questions on the revisions on that these. Any revisions for the ones that were made so far. So I think we're ready to get started, and I'm going to kick this over to Kristen Davis with our first policy of the 28.
Thank you. Good morning. And I will actually volley it right over to Mr. Porter, since we're going to go ahead and start with board member Hahn's policy. That's all right.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair and board members. As the superintendent said, most of these are cleanup policies. The first policy, though, has been submitted by member Hahn, and it's a policy about lobbying by former employees. I'll tell you as she presents it that it completely aligns with Florida statute. Other jurisdictions have very similar policies in place. For instance, the County Commission has a similar policy, and I believe the City of Tampa does as well. So the policy aligns with Florida statute and is being requested by member Hahn to be embodied in our policies. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. I appreciate my colleagues' time this morning to present this policy. As Mr. Porter mentioned, this policy does align with our current state statutes. It, in general, says a person who's been elected to any county, municipality, or school district office or appointed superintendent of a school district may not personally represent another person or entity for compensation for a period of 2 years. That's also reflected in the policy that I put forth today, as well as includes current employees, and it extends to former employees that have left the organization within the last 2 years. I think that in presenting this policy today, it's just another way that we continue to build trust with our community. I think we've done a really good job of that over the last couple of years to regain the trust of our community. But I think we always need to look for opportunities to demonstrate that we have high ethical standards in this district. This policy actually enhances, I believe, the effectiveness of the current state law in several ways. It sets clear ethical standards. It avoids conflict of interest, which can create an unfair advantage. It protects public funds to demonstrate that they're being used responsibly and efficiently, free from undue influence or favoritism. It reduces the risk of legal disputes or challenges, and it helps maintain public trust and reputation of the school board and the school district, showing we operate with integrity and fairness. I appreciate my colleagues' input, and I look forward to the discussion. If you have any specific questions for me, feel free to direct them directly to me during discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hahn, and we'll go ahead and begin discussion. We'll begin with Member Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Member Hahn. What statute, what Florida statute, I just don't see the numeric value on the,
It's 112.313.
so, and this is a question maybe for you or maybe not, but if a person runs for school board and they're promoting themselves, is this included in this, or, I mean, by the definition of lobbying, and thank you for that, is there an inclusivity with that?
So not for people running for office. So if this would apply to employees of the district who have left the district and then attempt to come back and lobby the current board.
Okay,
So
okay,
it wouldn't apply to that.
okay, all right, that's it.
About people using lobbying, and they're getting some financial compensation from that effort.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Vaughn.
Member Vaughn?
Really quickly, yeah, I appreciate this policy. I think that I agree that we work very hard to rebuild trust with our community and be as transparent as possible, and we talk about those words. So I think it's important to align ourselves with state statute as well as be as transparent as possible. Thank you.
I had one quick question as well. I just want to clarify, I think this is great, I don't have a problem with it, but how about with the right to work state? Is there any kind of conflict or anything like that? I just want to make sure it's,
No, this goes to ethics and
Okay.
just using your public position for private gain, and it's embodied in statute,
Okay.
so it aligns with that. It's a great question, but it wouldn't apply in this case.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay, great. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, well, go on with the next one.
Okay, so one of the things that we had talked about for the process here, we talked about chunking them out for reviewing. So if the board is comfortable with that, we were going to ask if you had any questions about the next policies on HR, and if we need to adjust that way of how we're going through them, we can. So we talked about just, I know you've had your binders, so we could offer the opportunity to ask questions. We have our HR team here, or we certainly can walk through them. Chair Combs, if you can just provide some guidance, or Mr. Porter.
I think what we can do is just go through, and if anybody has any questions, just kind of motion to myself or Mr. Porter. So for 1160, the policy number 1160, are there any questions around the physical examination, that part? Yep.
Were those just duplicate
They are, that's
policies?
correct.
That's why there were three that were exactly
Yes,
the same?
in three
Okay,
different
I
sections.
just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Ms. Gray?
Yes, online, this is policy 1160, on line 24. It subscribes that the superintendent may discuss the results of the report with the healthcare provider. So I just wanted to be sure, and this is a question that reassures me if the answer is what I think it should be. The HIPAA law gives the patient's rights. It also has a privacy rule, and it also has a security rule. But the privacy rule of the HIPAA, I'm just trying to understand that the superintendent, whomever that person is, has the ability to discuss the results of a physical examination. I don't know if anyone wants to maybe clarify that or not. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I've got my general manager, Craig Horstman, that can answer the question regarding the changes in the policy.
Yes, ma'am. So the short answer is Mr. Ayers still has that right, that responsibility to check HIPAA laws, get the release. The only change in 1160, 3160, and 4160 is that the forms are now all electronic. So the policy previously read that it was a form that they would complete during their processing appointment time. It is all done electronically and prior to their appointment time now.
So the answer to the question of the HIPAA laws?
Still intact, still in place.
Okay, that the superintendent can.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
And Member Gray, I think it's a great question. I mean, you'll note that that part of the policy has been in place for some time.
I know.
It's not being changed, and so that has been vetted. And from a legal perspective, as HIPAA still applies, it just has to be complied with, and that's the responsibility of the superintendent to make sure that that happens.
Got it. Thanks.
Member Rendon?
I kind of want to follow up a little bit on the HIPAA policy. So we've removed the section in which it says to execute the HIPAA release. So are we going to eliminate that from the policy?
What line is that one?
It's on line 615. And to execute the HIPAA release will be grounds for withdrawing conditional offer employment. So are we going to maintain a HIPAA release, or we're not going to maintain any HIPAA release?
The release is still there. It's just all part of the electronic piece of the puzzle. It's all part of the process still. It's just that it's electronic now. There is an actual form given to the individuals at processing. It's done in advance prior to them scheduling their processing and fingerprinting appointment.
And then, okay. And then do we provide any education to our staff that are addressing, I mean, the superintendent as well as any other staff that are going to be touching sensitive information regarding HIPAA? Because I'm sure the superintendent would want to know that he can explain that they do not meet the qualifications for employment based upon the physical examination, but cannot release what exactly that reason is within the examination. So do we provide any training on HIPAA policy?
Yes, ma'am. The fingerprinting and processing teams are the most sensitive to this particular item. And yes, they've gone through previous training or training as they are onboarded into their roles.
Okay. So because, that would be very critical, important to me to make sure that whoever is responsible for the follow-up from that, they understand if they're the ones that are going to tell a principal or tell the superintendent, whoever, they know what can and cannot be shared, which is obviously nothing regarding their physical health.
Yes, ma'am.
The other question I have is, we do have 3 exactly the same policies, and I do understand that there was a reasoning behind it based upon clarification, but could we just have a little more explanation of why we just can't lump them into one?
Mr. Porter, do you want to talk a little bit about the
So, yeah, that's one of the reviews that the staff has been going through and trying to eliminate duplication. Sometimes it's a result of the bargaining units and the contracts that we have with the different, bargaining units. So that's one of the things that has to be reviewed to see whether we can eliminate them or whether they can, or they have to remain individual based on the sort of the bargaining aspects of things.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
Okay, so for instance,
I apologize.
Yeah, so I don't want to use these as examples, but there could be a policy that applies to instructional staff, non-instructional staff, and students. And if there's a way to combine them into one because they all say the exact same thing, we're going to do that. But if for some reason the individual contracts we have with those units, the language is slightly different, they might have to be different or might have to have separate policies for that reason. And that's part of the review that the staff is going through right now.
So in these particular policies, though, their language is exactly the same.
So, that it's been determined that they can be combined or eliminated.
Okay, so then why do we have 3 to review?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I misunderstood what you said. So, if when they're still separate, there's a reason why they have to be separate, and it usually has to deal with the contract.
I can answer that question. The reason why that there's different ones, as he mentioned, that each of the contracts are different. And when you look at our employee handbook, the policies themselves, it may be that this category 300, it has it for that particular contract. For this policy, it's 400, it's for that particular contract. So we do have to have them separated. And that's the corresponding numbers that you see here. When you're looking at the numbers, it corresponds to that. The 3, the 1, and the 4 correspond to each of those specific categories.
Okay, again, excuse my ignorance, but they're the exact same policies. So when we refer to them in the contracts, can we just not refer to one of them? Because there's no language difference.
I haven't seen in my career where referring to them as one works, that it's better that individually, because individuals may not go and say, I'm looking at the policy overall in general. They may look to their contract, and we need to have specific language that they can see in their contract that relates to them in that portion that we have.
Yeah, I mean, so the three different groups, you've got our instructional group, our administrative, instructional, and support group. That's why you have the three different policies here. But I get your question,
I
too.
get all
So
that.
if it's all the same, let's just
I mean,
talk
there's
through that.
no-
If they're all the same.
There's no wording change. That's where my confusion comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I
If
get-
we had a difference in here that said instructional staff, or it said administrative staff, or students, then I can see why we would need to have three different policies. But the policy itself is exactly the same. So whether it's in a contract, or if it's in the contract we're referring to a policy, why can't it just be referred to the one?
I think that's an opportunity that we can look at, as we've discussed, that we do want to, perhaps change that protocol and make it much easier to find and not have the three different categories.
Because I think when we have it at three different categories, but they're the exact same, we open more for question, to me. So, thank you. Sorry.
Member Gray?
Let me get this. I agree with Member Rendon, because one of the big goals that we have is to combine, to clean up, to polish policies, and if it's legally correct, and with deepest respect, Dr. Patton, in the spirit of making things clean and, let's just say, more concise, I'm lending towards the discussion that Member Rendon has suggested. So if that's an opportunity and the board is in consensus, I think that would be a wise move to make. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Porter, maybe that's something you can find out what other districts do and what it looks like, just to make sure the legality of it. I think the most important thing is the legality and making sure that we're covered for the contract. So that's really important.
And I appreciate this is the kind of discussion in this workshop, to have this discussion, because these have been in place since 2010, and Member Wren is right, they're the same exact, but this is something we've had in place, so we'll go back and relook at that. So I appreciate Ms. Rendon, thank you for bringing that up, and we'll go back and see if this is part of that process that I talked about earlier of streamlining policy. So we'll go back and take a look and see if we can do that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, we're moving on to 1210 and 3210.
And if there are any, we'll go ahead and follow the same process then for those two. If there's any questions, we have.
Okay, so 1210. Okay, Member Vaughn?
All of these changes are specifically due to state statute, right?
They are.
There's
yes,
nothing
with these.
coming
Yeah.
specifically from the
Yes.
district. Okay, thank you.
You should probably recognize some of the language in there. Yes, from the legislative session.
Any questions? Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, Member Rendon? Sorry, I don't have my phone, so.
That's okay. So on number 2, even though this was not a change for policy 1210, unreasonably restrain a student from independent action in pursuit of learning. Do we designate anywhere, I did not see anywhere in this policy or the other one where we designated out the difference between, with any kind of restraint in relation to the policy, the Florida statute, not this year, but the previous year, regarding restraint of our students and especially our ESC students? I don't see that it's designated out in either one of these policies as a possibility. It does say not unreasonably restrain a student, but we don't really have a distinct policy how it regards to anything within an IEP or a 504 plan or a behavior plan, which would allow for restraint, in comparison to where Florida statute now says we cannot really restrain on property, even for behavioral type of student. Sorry.
I'm going to allow Kelly King, our executive officer, to speak to that.
So this information is taken directly from the principles of professional conduct. That comes from the state. So policies related to reasonable force or restraint would be something that would be separate from this.
But it says an unreasonably restrain a student from independent action in pursuit of learning. That's pretty broad.
Correct.
So I don't want to mitigate that, and I want to make sure I give flexibility to a principal, but I also want to make sure that we protect principals and we protect our administration by making sure that we bring into, because, Florida statute has changed, not this previous year, but the year before when it came to restraints. And so I don't see that as, do we review that in comparison to this?
So this is the updated policy that comes from the principles of professional conduct, so that may be under a separate rule, but this is what all licensed educators are required to uphold.
And we'll go ahead, we'll look that up.
Right,
to
because
ensure
I
that
mean, I want to
it's
make sure
covered
that
in-
we're
Yes, ma'am.
independent of something coming from
It's
outside
on my
of our
follow-up list.
district.
You got it. Yep.
If we could, please.
I would agree with that. And again, we appreciate the conversation and dialogue because it gives us an opportunity to go back and put more clarity in there. So that way, if that does come up, there's either a reference to where to go find that policy, or if it can be added to this policy, we would do that.
Yeah, thank you, because I know there's very specific rules now on restraint in schools. So I want to make sure that we protect our staff as well as our students. And in order for that to happen, we need to be very specific with our policy. And then making sure that, again, we protect students that really do need protection from themselves or others while in an educational setting.
Thank you for that feedback.
Okay, great. So on that specific policy, we'll hold back, so that way we get some clarification before we move on with that.
Well, I
Not for
would
this,
suggest
or
we keep moving forward, but.
Yeah, keep moving
more
forward, but we'll
research
go back and do more research on that? Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
For the public
Follow up,
hearing.
yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Let's go on and move on. Next is,
Yes, to the privacy protection of fully insured group health plans, the 1419, 34, and 4419. Yes. We have any questions on that? Pretty straightforward.
okay, anybody? I had a question. Is the long-term care plan just taken off because of statutes, or what was the reason that was?
I'll have Dr. Tracy Strasburg, that's my general manager, speak to that question.
One more time. There you go.
There we go. No, it's actually not in state statute. It's just something we haven't been doing. It hasn't been in place for over 10 years, and so it was more about aligning with our practice. Great question.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other questions? Okay, Member Rendon?
So just let me make sure I understand the reason for the policy is that we basically are just stating that we are an association that because it says privacy protections of fully insured groups. I don't understand why we have a policy regarding that. I guess that's where I'm confused.
It's a great question. I think, this goes back to, I think, OPAGA days when policies were created throughout the state, and this was in alignment with them. And we talked about, it's like, I wanted to remove that long care term because we don't do it, but it is odd that the name of that, I mean, the answer is that that's how it's always been, but that, we're really just trying to make sure that our practice is in line with what we're doing. And, we do have a fully insured plan that can change at any point when y'all are ready to do that.
But my question is do we need a policy on that, or isn't it part of our employee handbook?
From a legal perspective, you're not required to have a policy, but
Right.
under the statute, you can, and you have had one for quite some time. If the board would like to look at whether a policy is needed, we'd be happy to look at that.
I'm just saying, I think as we're doing this, we have to just look at things from a point of view of a good organizational policy. And sometimes when you get so many policies, it becomes more bureaucratic than realistic. And to have a policy to say we have insurance when we're already covering that in our employee handbook seems redundant, seems to add more work of one more thing we have to review, one more thing we keep track of, one more potential liability when we put something in writing outside. I mean, our policies are part of our liability. So I guess I just didn't understand why we even had it.
Dr. Strasburg, any idea how long this policy's even been in?
Probably like forever. I would say a really long time. I would say at least OPAGA days, which would have been, 2005, 8. It's been a long time. I think we can do whatever you'd like. I would say the only, should we choose to remove it, which works, I would say we would just want to make sure that the public knows that we're not saying we're not giving insurance, because that could be just as scary to folks. So we would just make sure we do it right.
Member Vaughn?
Thank you. I agree that sometimes it feels like there's too many policies, and like when I refer people to go look at policies, it can be overwhelming. But I do think that for our employees, having something that is not just a Not to say that any of our internal policies are loose, but sometimes they're harder to find and get clarity on. So I do appreciate having a policy that's in writing on our website that provides clarity to refer employees to specifically when they have questions. Because sometimes the difference between like an internal policy that the superintendent might mandate or that comes down through the chief of school.
You know, there is redundancy, and we see that in many of the policies, and an example will soon come up where we have a tremendous amount of references to the Student Code of Conduct, and then you would wonder, well, why don't we just drop the policy and then go right to the Student Code of Conduct? But to Member Vaughn's point, when we talk about taking any retaliatory action or suggesting that we're going to waive their rights under the privacy rule, and I'm just looking at line 10, then we're going to get into such legal dictation, feel free to comment, that I think needs to have a little bit more emphasis in a policy, because it looks to me, and Porter, you can, check on that, but when we talk about legal assurances, anytime I get near a lawsuit possibility, I am concerned about the cost to the district. So for whatever that's worth, I'd like to, with deepest respect to Member Rendon, keep this policy. There's a reason why it's been on the books for many, many times, and I know that, Kristen, you've looked over policies and had an individual look through them with you, and Mr. Porter. So, Mr. Porter, your feedback?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think there's no requirement that it be there, but you're allowed to do it. And I think because it's been there, it's worthwhile looking at why it was put there in the first place and whether it's still needed. And there could be some benefit to keeping it. If it does turn out to be that it's something that the board decides is redundant and not necessary, it can always be removed. But I think it's worthwhile doing a little more research to find out why it was put in place in the first place.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Member Washington?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me go back to probably 2001, 2002. A lot of these policies were put in because of the lawsuits that we had in place back then. We had quite a few lawsuits against the district. So what happened was to just make it so we didn't have no problem, we put in all these policies. So anytime a person had a problem, they'd go, it's policy 809, and we just kept putting policies in, and the reason why it was to eliminate the lawsuits against the school system. We made sure we wanted it covered all the way through. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Washington. Member Rendon? Member Press, did you have a comment? No, okay.
Sorry, I didn't know what she was looking at. So, because when I read through all these policies, it's a repetitive of the law. And it's not something that changes the policy. It's a repeated, it's a repetition of the law. It quotes, like Member Gray, you said, the fully insured group plan establishes the board shall refrain from taking any retaliatory action against any individual to exercise any right under the plan, filing a complaint. That's already part of the plan. That's not part of whether we say it or not, that's part of the plan. No employer can refuse somebody to file a lawsuit against the plan. That's part of the law. But let me ask you this. Does this policy limit us and require us to always have a fully insured plan?
No, I think when the district is ready, when you guys are ready to go.
No, I'm just saying, but does it limit us to anything?
No, I don't believe so. And as I've looked at other districts who are self-insured, they have, because of OPAGA, it leads with fully insured group plan, so we would be fine.
Well, but the difference with that and this is that we would be the responsible party. In this case, the health care plan is the responsible party. So we're creating a policy for a healthcare plan that we're not responsible for. So that's why I was asking the questions from the beginning. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, we'll move on.
I just wanted to add one thing. In my experience over the years, when you create an employee-centric environment where the employees have access to information as quickly as possible, having a policy like this is very clear, because if it's only in the handbook, for example, they have to go look for it, which creates frustration, and we want to make sure that everything is, employee-centric so the employee can find it quickly and fast. And if they're not a handbook kind of person, then they can go to the policy and the information's there and clear, but they also have another option to go to the handbook. So that's why I'm sure it was put in place as well. But, to the pleasure of the board, if you feel as if it's something that might be redundant, then we can talk with Mr. Porter about that and see if this is something we can remove. But we still need to make sure that there's a place they can find it very quickly if the question comes up as to where it's at.
I do have one more question. Again, this is another one that's exactly the same. So, can we review that? Because
We're going to review all of them.
it's a policy that's not required, and now we've got the same exact policy in two places.
Okay, and we'll clarify if it's because of the contracts or if it's because bargaining, or what the issue is or what the cause is. But I do think that I'm hearing that people want to keep this policy, but we just don't know if we have to keep it for 3 times. Is that what I'm hearing from everyone? So that way we have more clarity.
Separate issues we're looking at.
Yes, okay. I just want to make sure there's clarity.
You're right.
Yeah.
There's 3.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is 2411.
Member Cummings, if it's okay with the chair, while we have Dr. Patton, can we skip to the other HR ones real quick and then come back to that one? Or you want to keep going? We can keep
I think if we can just keep going, I think it'll just be
You got
easier
it.
going
All right.
back and forth, because that way we can miss. Sorry. We'll play,
Okay.
it might be easier. Okay, the next one is 2411, which is student support and federal programs, and that's the school counseling services.
And I know we have Angelique Zenick, who will be available for questions and to provide a highlight as well. So we'll open up for questions.
Okay, we'll start with Member Vaughn.
Thank you. I did have some questions about this one. Starting with line 14, when we talk about provide preventative and responsive services, including crisis counseling as needed, and address student mental health needs as appropriate, what are our guidelines for when we provide preventative or responsive services? Is that a superintendent decision that we're going to send something out after a crisis? Is there a policy internal on that? What does that look like in being responsive?
Oh, yeah, but you got it right there.
Yay! Okay. So I'm not aware of any guidelines for that. We just normally, as a student services team, discuss what might be going on, like most recently with the war. They put together something, or they brought out something from the National Association for School Psychologists, and Holly sent it out. So, but
It's all way of work procedural with us, but there's no policy around that. It's just all good practice and way of work.
Okay, because recently I've had some constituent questions about some instances at schools where sometimes there was a crisis team sent out or support for the students, and other times there weren't. So I'm trying to get clarity on what denotes that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. So for the crisis team, that is a request from the school. So the principal contacts the supervisor for psychological services, and she then discusses the situation and determines about sending out the crisis team. So they request it, and sometimes they request it and it may not be appropriate depending on the situation, but for the most part, when there's a death, when there's, whether it's a student death or a faculty, some other tragic situation at the school, and the principal puts in that request, they usually honor it.
Is there any way to include that somewhat in this policy so we could, again, if there was a question about it, guide someone to the policy to let them know that's per principal request?
It might be more under psychological services than school counseling services.
Okay.
And I can't speak to that. I don't know if it is or it isn't, if there's any policy around the crisis team, but I certainly would be happy to check and
Okay.
and let you know.
And then I have a question about line 23, where we struck out B, include the services of professional guidance personnel and other designated faculty and staff members. Did that mean previously we allowed services to extend to our faculty and staff, and now we're not? Because that's how I interpret it.
So this, as we looked through this, we realized that some of this is very old language. And so many years ago, we used to have a position called a guidance resource specialist, which was a position that did not require a counseling degree. And so that language to us is sort of left over from that. That position no longer exists, and all of our counseling positions do require a school counseling degree.
So that's just about the qualifications of the person providing. Okay, I was confused about that. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Sure.
And then 29, line 29D, why did we strike out equally?
I don't. It's
Am
not
I looking
strike-
at that
it's
wrong?
not struck out
29
on
F
mine.
B, be available. Is there a reason why we struck out equally?
I didn't. I didn't. We didn't. I didn't strike it out in my copy.
Okay, it is from the copy that we'll go ahead and we'll get together
I don't
and
know how that
and
happened.
understand why
That's
that's.
I printed the one that I
Yes,
submitted.
We will absolutely make a
It's not
correction.
out.
Consider it back in then. That's.
Okay.
that's just-
Yes, that was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't do that.
That's all the questions I had about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad you brought that up.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Perez?
Thank you. I am concerned about this 32, where it talks about counselors are dedicating 80% of their time. Right now, where it says at least 80%. Right now, where we have, we've spoken about it. Where, well, let me if you could define 80% for me.
Sure, absolutely. So the American School Counselor Association recommends that school counselors spend at least 80% of their time in direct and indirect services to students. So sometimes people think, okay, indirect means you could be doing lunch duty or testing. No, indirect services to students means I'm doing a referral to a mental health professional on your behalf. That's an indirect service. A direct service is actual individual counseling, small group counseling, conducting large group counseling lessons, and those direct services where you have a student or students in front of you. So the American School Counselor Association recommends at least 80%. I mean, ideally, we'd love to say it was 100%, but we know that's not realistic. So we wanted to put this in there because we're finding more and more their time is not being dedicated to the direct and indirect services to students.
So my question is going to go back to why not the 100? Because at the 100%, they could, divvy up their time, whether it's to complete their notes, be in direct student contact, or writing those referrals. But when you allow that 20%, they're going to end up in the lunchroom. They're going to end up doing car line duty. They're going to end up, so that 20% is left to interpretation. And I just feel that our school counselors are needed in those front lines for the mental health services. So can, we really look at that as far as the 100%, especially right now, what we're looking at.
It's fine with me.
We can definitely review that.
That.
When we talk about the supports that we provide to students, we do actually refer to our entire student services team. And so that includes our social workers, our psychologists, and our school counselors. And we can absolutely take a look. I think the greater concern is that we've had a lot of drift over the last several years where much of the time of the counselor is spent on non-counseling services, activities. So we really want to work more toward moving toward that 100%, although we would be happy with 80%, to be quite honest with you. So we will continue to review that. We do have some procedures in place that we will continue to review with our leaders, site-based leaders, around how we utilize the services of our counselors, because we absolutely want them working with students and around student needs. So we will continue to work toward that.
I have one more question, if you don't mind. How many counselors, social workers, and psychologists are we down right now?
So Angelique can probably tell you how many counselors
Yes.
were down.
Mm-hmm.
That was approximately 50, K-12.
Okay.
Psychologists were down about 40.
Mm-hmm.
And social workers we have much better success with recruiting and retaining our social workers. So it's not near what it is for counseling and psychologists.
So we're about 90 down, and we're utilizing them at 80%. You know, so we're really need to look at utilizing what we have at 100%, especially when they're really needed. Superintendent, you know, as a mental health expert, we really need our counselors, boots on the ground, and, you know, all their time with our students.
Thank you, Member Perez. And I have a couple questions, and I know we've talked about this. I know for you, the 80% is a huge win. I mean, we'd love 100%, but prior to that, there was no percentage, and often we know that, you know, because of shortage of teachers and shortage of things that happening and crises, sometimes counselors are in there, and our goal is obviously for counselors, because the mental struggles that our students and our faculty and even our community are suffering right now is very monumental. Prior to COVID, it was a problem. I think it's just been, you know, it has become even worse. So my question is, I agree with Member Perez. We want to make sure that our counselors are being proactive instead of reactive. And that means, and you know, with the changes when I first came in, the counselors are seeing even more students, especially in the high school. We've lost our career counselors. There's a lot of things our counselors are doing. Even career, all sorts of things that are working extra. So my question to you is, obviously we'd like to have it higher, but at 80%, and I know you're happy that's a step in the right direction, how do we make sure that we ensure that the principals are abiding by that 80%, and it's not 50% or 60% or 70%. So that's my biggest question. If it is 80, how do we make sure that our principals, our administrators are abiding by that 80, and that we are getting the services that our community really needs and our students really need?
That's the $64,000 question.
So we will work with chief of schools, chief of transformation, to work with our principals to ensure that as we do our school walks, we have conversations with our student services teams to make sure that they are spending their time appropriately. And that's just about monitoring. And so we will work with Ms. Burkett and Ms. McCrae to ensure that our principal supervisors look for the kind of things that should be happening with our student services teams, as opposed to them being pulled more than 80% of their time doing non-student services types of activities. So we will work with our colleagues to ensure that that happens.
And I think probably the counselor's biggest time spent, at least in the middle school, especially high school, is on testing. I think there's a great deal of time being spent for them with testing, which actually adds stress, you know what I mean, if you really think about it. So, so just really looking at that component alone, I think would be huge for our schools, and also looking back at that career and the career center and the counselors that we lost a couple of years ago. I think looking at that is really important. Really looking at overall the counselors, I think it's great that we've changed the pay scale and have done several things, because we see that 90 counselors or psychologists down, that's a huge amount for our schools, especially when there's, our kids are in crisis. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate bringing this forward. I think as a board, we are really supportive of this, and we want to know how we can make sure that it's actually being implemented correctly. Member Gray?
Yeah, and I'm going to capture Member Perez's remark along with Member Combs. I think the equation, anytime you put a percentage, it's going to be questioned. I might think, we should just do 50%, and Sheikh may think, 100%. I don't know if there's a really good metric to put any percentage, other than we all know mental health crisis right now is one of the biggest priorities in our school district, and probably will be for many, many years. So looking at that percentage would be very important in terms of getting rid of it and saying another word to be inclusive of 100%. But the other part of the equation, the reality is councils are absolutely slated for testing. So if you're going to put 80%, and I'm just throwing out the number that's here, then we have to also put the testing, because, and Superintendent Ayers, interim, I think you need to speak on that too, because the counselor, that's part of their job description, is testing. And it used to not be, but now it is.
Not officially, but.
Well,
But you are absolutely right, and you had an opportunity to speak with one of my counselors earlier in this school year. It's not part of their job description, but it is placed upon them significantly, yes.
Well, that's good to know. So maybe, Superintendent Ayers, we need to clean that up too. What proportionality is going to testing, because testing's not ending for years and years, and if anything, sadly, it's probably going to be more. So at any rate, I think that needs to be looked at.
And I would just to follow up, and this is the question, we've been talking about this for the last 15 years of how our guidance counselors spend their time. So I am 100% behind this policy to at least give enforcement to our principals and leaders of our sites of what our guidance counselors should be doing and how they should be spending our time in all of our positions. It's what do you spend your time doing? So this number of 80%, of course, to everyone around the table, we would expect that number, direct and indirect counseling to students, should be at 100%. There are other duties, other things that happen at the school site that will work to get this number greater than 80%, but this metric at Leeds provides guidance to our school leaders of what that number should be and our counselors serving our students. So, but we've been talking, and this has been, I'm glad we're having this conversation. We've been talking about this for the last 15 years, because when testing rolls around and advanced placement testing, then it is who at the school site can assist our staff in getting our students tested, just as one example. So there's other duties that happen at school sites that have been happening. So it's just a matter of us, kind of wrapping our heads around it and determining what's the best plan here. But as far as this policy goes, 100% behind the 80%. Like that one.
But, and Superintendent Ayers, you have the pulse. You know the district for many, many, many years, and that's, I'm hearing that from you, and I'm obviously Shake and a number of you all have been around for a long time, but that's a big concern from this board. That's what I'm hearing. Thank you.
Okay, and I think Member Perez had just one more comment, and we're, and just remember, we're on policy 8. We have 28, so just, okay. Member Perez?
Yeah, but this is a concern of mine. So, we have a lot of students, especially our students of color, who really rely on the counseling services to help guide their future. And I get the testing, but our students continue to fall through the cracks. And it's because a lot of our guidance counselors are school hopping. They're in one school one day and in another school another day, and so they don't have the full attention of the one school. And so our students do not have the ability to access these school counselors on a regular basis. So if they get to the school and they're only providing 80% or left to the interpretation of the principal, then it's really hurting our students. So that's why I'm really looking at this 80%, and it's bothering me. And it should bother a lot of other people as well, because the data indicates that our children need their counselors. They need their counselors full-time in front of them to guide them, to assist them, and to help them propel them into their future.
Thank you, Member Perez. Member Rendon?
Member Perez brought up a very good point. And can I clarify this? Because we're saying school counseling here. We're encompassing guidance counselors under this policy, correct?
Well, we actually are not calling them guidance counselors anymore. There was a state statute that came out back in 2013 that actually officially changed the language, even though it was changed much before that. So school counselors are encompassing all certified school counselors.
So, Member Perez brought up a very good point. Are our school counselors, I know our social workers could hop, I know our psychologists could hop, but are our school counselors hopping?
No, they do not. However, for elementary, when there is a vacancy at a school, they might find a counselor at a nearby elementary school to do a T-payroll and go to that school one day a week to assist. Now, I will be honest, what they're assisting with really isn't counseling. It is things like CST, Child Study Team, 504 plans. And those are all things that you do not have to be a school counselor to do. It would be much greater use of their time if they were going in and doing their character ed lessons, doing their large classroom lessons, running a small group once a week. But for the most part, that's or maybe even 100%. That's not what they're doing. They are asking for help with those paperwork and committee type things. So, but we don't, in middle sometimes it happens too, but not typically in high school. If there's just one counselor, but we have a couple schools that have no counselors in middle, so we've tried to get a person to come out there, and we try to tell the administration, you can assign that responsibility, 504 CST, to a teacher. You can assign it to anybody. If I'm bringing a counselor over from another school, I want them to do counseling and stuff. So we're trying to do that. But otherwise, in a school, they cover, at high school, if there's a vacancy, they don't really get a choice, because who's going to handle A through C of the alpha, right? Because that person, we don't have anybody for that person. It's just by default. So they are supposed to be getting T payroll for taking over the extra responsibilities of that vacant position, the counselors that are sitting at that school, the high school or the middle school.
So I think that, Member Perez has a very good point that I understand the 80%, and I would agree, I would like to see that higher. I think the AP is one of the issues with the testing, because you can't have a teacher of the AP class do the AP testing, which is where we're limited. The other issue, so I think we need to revisit this again and make sure the language really firms up. My other part is we address under line item 11, aid students in identifying options and making decisions in academic, career, and post-secondary planning. However, when we then go into the detail, which incorporates your 80% and your indirect and direct, a comprehensive school counseling program will be offered to all students and we do not include that again. So in the listing, as we go into line 30 and below, we need to make sure we repeat that, because we don't show that as services that are being provided. And I'm not diminishing small groups, individual counseling, but not preparing a student when they're going to graduate is going to do anxiety like there's no tomorrow, right? If we're not talking about in middle school about options for high school and possibly career tech. So we need to make sure that we have that. So I like to see some of that language change to firm that up and really give a good insight of what that's doing. I'd also recommend that we bring this back in 1 year as a body, as a board. It is part of our legislative agenda to try to get some of the funding of our mental health dollars into our counseling services. So if we do that, maybe that will give us more of an opportunity to either increase the counselors or look at the definition. So I would suggest we bring this back in 1 year after knowing what's happened in the legislature and where we've gone, especially with the mental health dollars and what that legislative look like. But I definitely want to make sure that that bottom section, when it says shall do, we are very detailed in making sure if we're going to limit what they're going to do, we need to make sure everything they do is covered. I think that's respectful to them and to the students. And I agree. I would like to see this more. I would like to see it more like 90%. I don't want to see guidance counselors sitting there at midnight trying to get literally the day before school starts getting an academic schedule in place. So, thank you.
Thank you. Member Perez?
You mentioned that in high schools, they're normally, well-equipped with counselors. But in middle schools is when a lot of our children start dropping out. And so it's imperative to be able to get those counselors in there, even in elementary as they're going into middle school, because the angst starts in middle school. And so to help them out, at least see what they're pursuing, help them out, with their guidance, but to not provide that in middle school as a 100% focus and wait until high school. I think high school is great, but I think it's too late.
Thank you, Member Perez. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion around this and the expertise of Member Perez and Member Rendon. I think this is important. I just want to make sure I'm understanding some things that I'm getting from this policy. One, I did hear, and I want to reiterate, that although when we have counselors who are covering an elementary school because there's a vacancy, a lot of times they are tasked with completing and helping with the process of getting student services, IEPs, 504s. But you did say a certified teacher could be used in lieu of that, and we didn't need to use them for that? Okay. I just want to make sure I clarified that, number one.
Just want to clarify, not the IEP. It's important to make the distinction between the two, but we do, the CST itself doesn't require certified counselor.
I appreciate that clarification. And to Member Rendon's point, when we talk about in C, item 11, career and post-secondary planning, talking about bringing it down to the last paragraph, we had career counselors that are no longer there, right?
Correct.
So in lieu, I mean, essentially what we did is when we got rid of those positions, we added more work to our existing school counselors. And I just want to make a point that, I mean, when we have our educational forums and we talk to our high schoolers and we talk to our middle schoolers, the feedback that I get the most is that they're most frustrated about lack of school counselor, those counseling to help them with their post-secondary, and that that whole process is extremely overwhelming and that they feel abandoned there. So I don't know if this is an opportunity. I know we're just talking about the policy, but it lends itself as a board to discuss maybe looking at providing more support, and especially when we're talking about our mental health crisis and how our counselors are filling in for spots, at supplementing or somehow bringing back support for those positions so we don't have to use our counselors in that way, because I do know that the feedback that I get is out of all the positions that we've lost, that's a big one where our students are hurting the most. So I would just like to give my feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Vaughn. And then we'll, Member Hahn,
Thank you,
and Superintendent
Thank
will
you, Member
wrap up.
Combs. There's been some comments around the college and career counseling, and yes, you all made very accurate statements about that. But I just wanted to add that I sit on the board of the Hillsborough Education Foundation. They have a program called SCOPE, Student Center of Post-Secondary Exploration, for 9th through 12th graders. And they partner with Hillsborough County School District around this program. I do not have a list of the schools they're in, but I know they target schools where we have some of our most vulnerable students. And they provide high school students with one-on-one coaching, help with applications, financial aid, pursuing technical and workforce credentials, preparing for the SAT and ACT. So I mention that because I think it just is a really great example of how we work with different organizations to fill the gap when we can't provide that resource. So I just wanted to mention that in case folks didn't know that that existed. But it's growing as well. So, and I can get a list of schools. I just don't have it off the top of my head. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hahn, and maybe you can bring that to our next meeting or share that at the comments. Okay, I know Member Gray, you had a quick comment, and then we'll go to Superintendent Ayers, and then go on to the next policy.
Well, it comes down to money. We did leave or let go, for lack of better words, the career and tech counselors, which was part of a huge, massive amount of teachers. We also, for lack of better words, fundamentally let go in our attempt to budget, to be budgetary sensitive, and that was a devastation, remarkable devastation to our children. However, fast forward, Member Rendon, when you mentioned about the legislative platform, I had this on the platform in 2016, 2017, 2018, that the reduction of counselors per students, or the analogy would be students having more counselors, so we needed the funding. I don't think we should ever let that die again. I think it needs to be on the legislative platform every time, because this is not the first time this has come up. It's come up frequently. So it comes down to money and the priority. You all know, I think this board is in consensus, mental health is a big priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray. Member Ayers?
Thank you, Chair.
Not Member Ayers, Superintendent Ayers.
I appreciate this conversation. I just want to kind of bring things back as a reminder that the ASC national model recommends 80% or more of their time. So this is what we're doing with this policy strengthens the policy that we currently have. This strengthens that, and Angelique will have you back, and it will definitely bring you back in a year. We'll have that discussion to see if we want to further, look at this policy. But I just want to bring that back as a reminder that with this, what we're doing today strengthens what we had in place originally, and just follows that ASCA national model.
Thank you, and I want to thank you and the whole counseling department for bringing this forward. And I know this is a big win, and I think that you're hearing from the rest of the board that they want to continue to support that, and you have a lot of support from all of us on that. So thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Now moving on to 3139.02.
And this one, board members, actually just updates the title of the state board rule. The state board back at a meeting had changed the title of the rule, and so this just aligns what's in your policy with the title of the rule, the name of the rule for the state board rule. Okay.
Okay. Moving on to the next one is 3420.
And if there are any questions, I know Dr. Schatzberg would be available, because I know this added some language.
Added language for the employee benefits. Anyone? Okay, then we will move on to 4213, which is student supervision and welfare.
And you can see on this one, it just adds some language in terms of the social media.
Language with the specific social media. Any questions or comments? Okay, Member Gray?
In addressing 4213 on letter G, where it says students, support staff members are discouraged from engaging students in social media. So when we use words such as, they're a little bit vague, discouraged, I worry, because, it's a policy, and a policy, we should be very succinct. And there's a few other those words throughout the policies, and I know I'm getting picky, so just put that in parentheses. But I think that we need to be very direct, because social media now is huge in terms of sexting and texting and TikTok and all the other social media outlets. But more importantly, Superintendent Ayers, when we say discouraged, so how is this enforced? That's, and I know that, and I referred to the Student Code of Conduct, but there again, and I'll get into that later, there's not a relationship always with the Student Code of Conduct when we talk about punitive, and then when you use the word discouraged, so help me out with that. I think the word needs to be stronger.
I'll attempt to answer that, and Kelly, jump in if I misspeak. So I think there may be times where there is communication that happens through some of these social media channels, but overall in our district, we discourage the use of that, and we recommend finding alternative ways to communicate. However, there may be times that, Instagram, we have social media accounts through Instagram, through X, that could provide methods of communication through that, but it's not something that we're out recommending as a school district that our employees are communicating through these channels.
Isn't
To see if I'm right.
allowed for sure in our schools, the use of TikTok on
Yes.
Yeah, TikTok is on school device. Sorry, Kelly.
I was just going to say, there may be times where it may deem to be appropriate. There may be a support staff member who also serves as a coach, for example, or may be sponsoring a group of students. And so it may be appropriate for them, as Superintendent Ayers was describing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd be interested to see what the board comments on the discouraged. But let me ask you, Ms. Kelly, isn't TikTok not allowed from school employees to be used, or I might be.
So I'm not the expert on the communications piece, but
Yes, and again, this kind of lends itself to a long answer in a sense that you are correct in terms of devices, and that was in the bill. Now, state board rule did expand that to basically say that you cannot use TikTok to essentially promote any school extracurricular or any sort of activity at all. So it expanded as the state board rule did.
So the word discouraged doesn't meet what the new statute is saying. It's, but anyway, I'm being picky. I don't really advocate words that are not strong, because policy, is very legally bound, and discourage is a weak word. So I'll leave it at that. But let's work on. Let's do a wordsmith on that. see if we can make it a little bit more concise.
Yeah, thank you for that, Member Gray. We, as you said, this is an opportunity for us to continue to look and see how can we ensure that we're in compliance with whatever the current rule says, and then also make sure that the wording is one that legally is compliant as well as it does address any concerns that we might have. So we will follow up on that.
Follow through to make sure that, particularly TikTok, whether we're aligning with the rule or not. So, got it. Yeah.
If it's against the law, and then you say discourage, that doesn't meet.
Right. We might have to take TikTok out.
Might
But
have to
yeah.
take TikTok out.
Yeah.
So that was my only comment, and thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, Member Rendon?
A couple of comments, and my apologies, in F, if a student approaches a staff member to seek advice or questions regarding a personal problem related to sexual behavior, substance abuse, and/or mental health, physical health, a staff member shall refer a student to district staff certified. There's actually better written law that really states directly it should go to specific staff members, being a school counselor, social work, or psychologist. I would like to see that changed to make it fit better to the law.
We'll note that and follow up.
Yeah, so that would be an F. And then again in G. So I'm a little bit together with Member Gray and then a little bit off. I think we need to revise G. I think for two reasons. One, I do believe we need to protect some of our staff, especially our SGA members, our coaches. Many of them are using Instagram or Facebook to communicate things out regarding our students. And then again, dialing back when it comes to TikTok, definitely, and Snapchat, because those two are specifically mentioned. So I think I'd like F and G to be more revised to align more with A, which is protecting staff and students, and then as well, making sure we're aligning that a little bit better with the law.
Thank you. And I also would concur with Member Rendon. I think the law is being very specific about the social media and what websites are allowed and not allowed, especially on devices. I think the more clarity we have on that, the better, especially, with the use that kids are using. So it's so prolific in school. I always talk about the earbuds too. I mean, it's very prolific in what access and what things are happening. So I think the more we can tighten that up, the probably better it is for our district. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Move on to 4420. Okay. Any questions or comments on that one? Member Rendon?
Again,
this is what we're here for. This is what we're here for.
Right. And again, if we could just make sure, I know the one thing that the difference is, again, support staff, but the exact same policy. So if we can double check with the contracts, and if you know that is why it is, then you can tell me now. But if we don't know why that is, if we could come back and at least give us information at the time we're having the hearing on the policies to know and specifically be able to say, do this contract, do these contract, because again, the wording is only support staff or regular staff. It's not
It really was just to align with everybody, and since there isn't a generic section in our policy manual, it says all for those areas.
Great, thank you. And this is one of our biggest roles as school board members to talk about policy. So I appreciate everyone engaging. I don't want anyone to feel rushed. I mean, we have a lot to go through, but we also have another workshop that we can place them on. So it's very important that everybody feels like they have the time and the space to talk today. Okay, so moving on is 5112. And these are the entrance requirements.
Yes.
Okay, Member Vaughn, are we going back or are you on 5112? Okay. Member Vaughn? Okay. You may begin, Member Vaughn.
Hi, thank you. I have a question on line 34. Students must have immunization record, and then we added unless otherwise exempt for such requirement. I'm a little bit unclear about why that's added and what exactly that means.
So that was added because in statute there are exemptions that are allowed, And actually, since we had put this in, we had some conversation with Department of Health because there were questions about were there certain groups that would be not exempt from that. But essentially, in the end, anyone who's transferring into the district that doesn't have those requirements has a 30-day window. And we got that verified from the Department of Health, from their lead attorney.
But does that mean that they, even with a 30-day requirement, that they would still be required for those immunizations?
They're required, so they have right, in statute lists, it's a 30-day window for them to get that. So then what we do is, as a district, we work with the families to make sure that if they need to get a physical, immunization records and such.
But it doesn't say anything about the 30-day requirement. In the
That's in statute, so that's why we listed unless otherwise exempt from such requirement. And at the time we did this, there were only certain subgroups that had exemptions. For example, transitioning military families, migrant families, and I think there were some others.
Meaning, when you say exempt, are you referencing again to the 30-day?
Right, they were exempt from,
days
they
or
were exempt from, because this states, if you don't have the proper immunization, you'll be excluded from attendance, unless otherwise exempt from such requirement, meaning that you could enroll immediately,
But then they have to provide that within 30 days.
within 30 days. That's in statute.
So you're not really exempt, it's more like an extension.
Correct.
I don't know if we can make that any more clear, because for me that's a little bit confusing, so I would prefer a little more clarity on that. And then I noticed in the area where it's local parentis, which I'm assuming is in lieu of biological parents, it's but then there's the part where we added, but then we crossed out parts where we added things. So
Right, and all that was we just rearranged the wording so that it, just the way it was worded, we felt that that was a better flow in terms of how we define it. And again, we did that to align with statute because it was listed, or at the bottom, we decided to put it right in the front, where we had the quote, any person exercising supervisory authority over a student.
okay, so designated in writing by an adult person who's basically recognized as their parents as opposed to whom the student resides, we took that out?
I'm sorry, go back to where you were?
Line like 47.
Oh, I have the dirty copy, yeah.
Oh.
No, it's not on mine. I got
Okay.
it, 39. Okay, I got it.
So it's who the parents are recognized, not who they're residing. Is that the reason for the cross out?
Correct.
Okay.
It's who they are, and we put in there, and we used intentional language because we put the word requested, not required, in terms of the notary. And that comes from, and again, I worked with district legal on this whole section. But anyone who is acting in local parentis is the person who is in the supervisory capacity of the student at the time when they go to do enrollment.
So they don't need to provide notarized documentation for that.
We put the word requested.
Requested.
We did not put the word required. And that was a deliberate, because in the state of Florida, and Mr. Porter might be able to address this as well, a sworn affidavit does not have to be notarized.
Okay.
Correct?
Okay. That's all the questions I have now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Perez? And then Member Rundig.
Under verification of residence, how do we qualify that for? Right now we have many families who are co-residing with family members who are coming in like from Cuba, and who are how, because I've gotten a few complaints about this. So how are we verifying that we're not turning away students from schools because their name is not on the letter that they bring in as they are residing with a family member?
So there's a residency affidavit that if somebody doesn't own their own housing or they're without permanent housing at the moment, that they can fill out. The person whom they're residing with just needs to come in and prove their residency in that school's boundary.
Is there a way to add that in here? Because there's a lot of confusion when it comes to that. Parents are being turned away, students are not being enrolled in schools, and we have some students that have been out of school sometimes 2-3 months because they cannot verify the residence.
We can definitely put it in policy, but it sounds like that's a procedure procedural problem that we're not following the proper procedures at a particular school. And so we can add it to policy, but we really need to get it corrected at the school sites.
Can we add that to the policy in order for it to be?
And if I could just add, Ms. Perez, one of the things that I've been doing with our district legal and other stakeholders over the last several months is I have been having meetings and presentations to stakeholders. We just had a large committee that over the last year and a half, it was an enrollment, placement, and withdrawal committee, and I was kind of the subcommittee chair of the enrollment piece. And so I've presented to just about every stakeholder group, and I'm still doing it as we speak. So we're trying to get that out to refer them to that guide, because that guide is very comprehensive and it does address all the things that you have been sharing, that you've mentioned.
It's just ensuring that that those students get as much time in the classroom and not away from the classroom.
Thank you, Member Perez. Member Rendon?
Member Perez, I completely understand where you're coming from because we want children in schools. But I am also cautious to actually put that as a direct part of the policy and not part of the procedurally. Because when we put it in policy, I think we're going to have a flip side of that aren't necessarily the people that need to be in school, but are choosing schools. And I think we have to be careful not to make sure that we don't align with the law, but make sure we educate our schools so when someone does come into a role, we're doing it the proper way. Because I think that procedure could be taken to an advantage, and we don't want that to happen on the flip side either, to make our schools uneven in disparity. So I would only caution that, but putting it in policy over procedurally based. Because again, the procedure's there to protect people that aren't in a permanent resident, not for someone to take advantage because they want something, and so we want to make sure that the right people are being utilized the right things. So that would be my only cautiousness on that. The other thing is I want to go back to Member Vaughn and about the immunizations. Are there not exceptions to requirements of immunizations in our schools?
In terms of groups that don't have to provide, well, there are exempt, and this is under statute, like for religious reasons and things such as that. But this was just addressing that, and I think that's why that last part takes care of that, unless otherwise exempt from such requirement.
Okay, so then I guess I would caution us again to make sure that if we leave that there, then we have two policies, one to address the 30 days and then provide the immunizations, and the other one to then address that there are the exceptions to even requirement for certain different immunizations to be in school.
And we certainly can do that, again.
Not necessarily here, but in procedure.
And that is discussed procedurally, because in that enrollment packet, there's about 3 to 5 pages which regard immunization records, and a lot of that was lifted off statute. But I know it was discussed here earlier. One of the things that I didn't feel we wanted to do was replicate statute within our policies. If it was already in statute, just leave it at that.
I think there's 2 points of view of that one statement, from Member Vaughn, and then again, the not needing it to enroll, but yet needing 30 days, but then there also is exceptions where they don't have to provide that immunizations, and we want to make sure somewhere in the enrollment process or wherever we are mentioning both situations.
And I think what's important to remember, I think it's an excellent point, is this is under initial entry, and it deals with that, getting kids in school right away and not letting them have to be excluded for 30 days. So I think that's why it's here. I think the language could probably be improved, and I think we'll look at your other issue about whether the other issue needs to be included somewhere else.
Yeah, again, because I think Member Vaughn was asking about 2 separate things.
Two separate issues.
Right, but then if we leave that there, does that clarify it, and then we do better in our procedurals? Somewhere we just need to make sure we clarify that they're 2 separate issues.
Got it.
Thank you. And I also wanted to reiterate that for me, it's really about the procedure and actually what's happening at the school when people come, because you can have this, you can have this as a policy, but my concern is if there are quite a few schools that people will do whatever they can to get into that school, and if you're opening up that could end up hindering more students, especially in some areas where it's so over capacity, and now people have a way to be able to go into that school. So I think adding that could end up impacting us negatively. And I think it's more about the procedures and making sure that when students come, that nobody is turned away. So I think we really, I wouldn't want to add that because I am concerned about what the ramifications could be, especially for 4 or 5 of our high schools that are really over-enrolled right now. And that would open up a way to be able to, have a child go there, even if they're not living in that area. And it would impact other areas where we do have a low enrollment in schools where somebody is living by there. So that would be.
So we'll work on, just for clarity, we'll work on the wording on the initial entry for the 30-day exemption for the vaccinations, and then we'll just keep with our procedures in the enrollment process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. So we'll be moving on to 5113. Okay, 5113. And that is the school choice options, and I guess we're striking all of this because it's no longer in existence.
It was a No Child Left Behind Act,
Yeah.
which was the Bush administration, and we're leaving it behind.
Okay, I remember that, okay. 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 5120, which is assignment within the district. Any questions or comments? Member Gray?
Just one question. When it this relates to line 18, 12th graders may remain at their school after moving, but who remains in the district? Students who move out of an attendance area but have begun 12th grade. I had a question, and this is a curious one. How many are we talking about, estimation, that fit into this wording?
There's not many that it happens to, and we just corrected the wording on how we wrote. It says the same thing, but that has always been seniors who move out of the attendance boundary are able to stay and graduate with their cohort at their school, even if they move out of that attendance boundary, provided they have transportation.
So, guesstimation about, Sue?
I probably couldn't give you a guesstimation. I don't know.
So what's supposed to happen is when the school is notified that the family is, moving out of their attendance area, in their 12th grader, they have to contact my office because we have to put the right placement code, which is now their choice. And, Ms. Gray, to say if we get 10 to 15 of those a year for high school seniors, that's probably a lot.
Okay, that's what.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. 5225, the absence of religious holidays. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm sorry. We're going back to 50.
Yeah, my apologies. And what number were we at? Yeah, 5120. Under 32 in the military, and I was rereading it when Member Combs was going through, and I just want to make sure. When I've read it and I've read it again, active duty military station and here's where, is there a change? They still have to be active duty when there's a boundary change, correct? They can't be retired in that process. It must be active duty.
And I pulled that to use the wording from current statute 1003.05.
Right. And then our procedures are going to have more of the details of what they have to provide for that, but we want to make sure, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to make sure I clarified it's active duty only. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
No, as I said, please. Okay, moving on to 5225, which is the absence for religious holidays. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. Where did this stem from? Like, who reached out to Jonathan Ellis, and how is that designated as the person who would help us decide which holidays would need request offer?
So that would be me, because I am Jewish. Those are not considered major holidays in my experience of growing up. So before we took them off, we wanted to make sure that we consulted with the Jewish Federation to make sure that we weren't unilaterally making a decision about students missing school.
Okay. So a few years ago, I tried to bring forth a policy to have more of a floating holiday for any religion, and that did not pass. But what I would like to see on this, especially if we're removing some, is I would like to see Diwali added for the Hindu population.
So I think in years past when we had exam exemptions, this is where religious holidays and how they were being marked were really an issue, because if it counted as an absence, it counted toward an exam exemption. We don't do exam exemptions anymore, so any family can take any day off that they choose. It would be an excused absence. What we're trying to do is, if it is for a religious holiday, to code it as, because we have no other option, school business, even though it isn't school business, but we don't want it to count against perfect attendance for students. So any parent could call in any holiday on that, but we can definitely add that as one of the exemptions.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I've had a lot of feedback that parents don't understand that, and kids, especially in New Tampa, where most of our schools are at 41% for the Indian population, miss Diwali. A lot go back to India, or they have full-day celebrations, and parents aren't aware of that. So I think having it clearly in our policy that that's the biggest holiday and the one that they would miss. So I'd appreciate that added.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Board. We'll move on to 5320, which is late arrival and early dismissal. Did I say that? Oh, 5230? Yes, 5230. Did I say 53? Oh. 5230? Okay. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. I'll make this brief. From my understanding, we removed school employees being able for students be able to remove from school employees. Is that correct? Because we had before under 15 and 16 dismissal at the request and the company of anyone other than school employee, police officer, judicial authority, and then when we revamped it, parent with legal rights, an individual listed on the emergency card, law enforcement, court express authority, or custodian of the student. So does that change it from employees as well, school employees?
So the discussion that we had was for this particular policy, if in the local parentis that we defined earlier in a previous policy, if that should be, because that's where a school employee would be covered under. But, and that's something that we had some discussion back and forth on, and again, with that, but it's something that certainly we could put in it, rather than just put the school employee, we would put anyone acting, who's been designated as in local parentis.
I mean, I'm not against it per se. I'm just trying to understand the change and make sure that I was understanding it correctly. That going forward, a school employee, in order for a student to be released, would have to be acting as the authority figure, correct?
Right. Because I think the underlying thing was we just didn't want a teacher to decide,
Right.
I'm going to take a kid and go
Okay.
off with them. So that's kind of why we tried to.
Okay, I just wanted clarity on that. Thank you.
Board members, any comments? Okay.
Under this, do we designate anything for any students, even if they're over the age of 18? They're still required to have parental consent to leave, correct?
Correct. That's procedural. Anyone that's enrolled at our school that is not emancipated themselves, and there's a whole process for that. But if they're living with a parent or guardian, then they still need that permission.
And even if they're over 18?
Correct.
They still will need that through their school age, until they graduate.
As long as they haven't proven to the school, and this rarely happens, I have seen it a few times where they have shown documentation that they've emancipated themselves. Like you have an 18-year-old that's living, with
On
a
their own.
girlfriend or boyfriend, and they have their own apartment.
Well, unfortunately, we are seeing more and more of that, of students in their senior year, that they are living independently. And so in that case, it just makes sure that we have that procedurally so that a school can address it would be my only concern. I would hesitate to put it in complete policy, but definitely procedurally wise, because, even at graduation, we had several students that were our highlight seniors that were not living with family and completely supporting themselves. So they need to have that flexibility. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Rendon. Okay. Next is 551701, which is bullying and harassment. Okay. We'll start with Member Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at 5517.01 on the line that is, line 16. and this again is wording, but I first want to thank Sue Burkett for being student-centered as I look through all of these policies that you're in charge of. Definitely comes through. So, and I thank you for that. Line 16. Now, this is, I'm just starting it out. This is not owned, leased, or used by the district or school if the bullying substantially interferes with or limits the victim's ability. So when we use the word substantially, I think that needs to have who determines substantially. There has to be a match on that, because that again allows a lot of leeway for what is substantially. What does that mean? You know, do I define substantial the same as Member Combs, etc.? And I'd like that recorded as a possible wordsmith on that one. Line 18 and 19, it addresses on 19 the entire paragraph from 12 to 19, and on the last sentence on 19, this subpart does not require a school to staff or monitor any non-school related activity. So when you say this subpart, but on the beginning of D, again, letter D, and that would be line D, if a subpart is referred to at the end of the paragraph, it should be also mentioned in the beginning, because at the end it says this subpart, but I didn't know it would be a subpart. The same thing when we had a Florida statute where there was a clarification given on the Black history. It's the word, sometimes if it's not put in there, it's not clear. So I would like to see that put in the beginning of the paragraph so we can follow through in a literary type way of reading. Also, 21, line 21, the superintendent shall develop a comprehensive plan intended to prevent bullying. Now, on some of your other policies, 5600, 5610, 5611, you refer to the student code of conduct, which then I went ahead on those other ones, referred to the student code of conduct. And this was adopted 2022, which is last year, but we wordsmithed that. So my question is, why don't we put in the same type of framing of the other policies, refer to the student code of conduct or such verbiage that would match the literal meaning on those other policies? And I'll be specific: 5600, 5610, and 5611. Next, on 45, line 45, social exclusion. You know, that's a hard word to observe and hard word to document. I'm not sure, and the board members may weigh in on this, how, you know, what does that mean to us, social exclusion? So it is a form of bullying, and many of us know it all too well, but a little bit hard to understand. And this is, again, from an individual board member. Next page, on line 50, when we say right on the top, not limited to electronic mail, internet communications, instant messages, all these avenues, but we should include AI because that's artificial intelligence, and that's coming up as well, in my opinion, because that's something that we need to pay attention to. Then almost last, next page, still on policy 551701, line 105, school administrators, faculty, staff, and volunteers serve as role models for students and are expected to demonstrate appropriate behavior. And I just heard, it was during we had a retreat yesterday, that Superintendent Ayers did give the expectations of role models for his cabinet, and I wanted to say thank you, because that's very important. Superintendent Ayers interim, and I think that civility and respect and refusing to tolerate harassment or bullying is extremely important, equally from students, of course, but equally with our school administrators, faculty, and staff. and that's just a comment. On the way bottom, 119, procedure. I'm wondering if we need to have procedures in a policy, because we have procedures, again, it's in the Student Code of Conduct, but do we need it again in a policy? So we spend, and I appreciate the clarification, because a lot, maybe some don't, I'm used to reading the Student Code of Conduct, but that's all listed, most of it's listed in that. Do we need procedures? And I don't know whether we really need procedures in a policy, because we usually don't have procedures. And that's Superintendent Ayers' call, because you are in charge of procedures, not policy necessarily.
Correct.
Your
Correct.
remark?
They're in all of our policy, there's very few times that we have procedures that are listed. I can think of maybe one other one. So, I mean, I'm up for, if we want to remove this and put it within our procedures of bullying and harassment, we can absolutely do so. I'm not, Sue, do we know when this one was originally, or Kristen, when it was?
Usually done in
Adopt-
2014. and
2014?
since then,
Okay,
so
there you go.
Lots of very different time.
I'm absolutely open. Of course, it's your policy, but I'm open to removing it if the board wishes to do so, and we can put it within our procedure.
And I welcome, as we all do, the board comments, but procedures, again, I think can be left out of a policy, especially it takes 2 pages, 3 pages. Last, the data report, that's on 229, and I think that should probably stay. And let's see, the last page, 246, teaching and instruction. Again, that's in the Student Code of Conduct. So I think also you can refer in parentheses, as you've done with the other policies, subsequent policies, you can easily put down, refer to Student Code of Conduct. And you'll see, you all, board members, you'll see that this will be written in many of the policies. It's in parentheses. It says including consequences defined in the Student Code of Conduct, or it might say refer to the Student Code of Conduct, and it's written as a correction. Does that make sense, Ms. Burkett?
Yes, ma'am. I don't have a problem with it. We probably overdid it because it is such a problem. I mean, we're fighting bullying on all sorts of platforms, so we probably were a little more wordy, but we can definitely reduce it to keep it to policy and remove the procedures.
Well, that's because you're very in tune with the student situation, and you're trying to be remarkably careful and relevant, and I appreciate that, but I'm just trying to be objective as to...
Points well taken, ma'am. We'll
Okey-dokey.
pare that down to just policy.
Okay, and I welcome other comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Gray. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. I disagree in removing the procedure for reporting. I think that that's important to keep for parents who are evaluating our policy and want to know the next step and what that looks like. I understand it makes the policy long, but again, we've talked several times that our employees and our parents might not know what alternative guidelines to look at, whether it's the Student Code of Conduct or the handbook or any of those options. I think that since we keep our policies online, and a lot of time that's where I refer parents and constituents, that we should keep that integrity within the policy. So I disagree in regards to that. And I'm just curious, is there anything for maybe students that report bullying when they're not actually being bullied, where, there's false reports of that in any way, shape, or form? Do we address that in any manner in regards to, because people can weaponize the term bully and use it incorrectly, and when they're being held accountable for their behavior, they might call it bullying in some way. So on the other side of the coin, is there anything to prevent people from, denouncing people as bullies when they're not?
Correct. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the substantiated bullying comes into effect, is that schools have to investigate it to find out if it is valid bullying. We struggle all the time with defining bullying and what that looks like for an individual. So all of them reported, whether they are substantiated or not, get investigated and followed up with victims, with the perpetrator, and with parents whenever they're reported at a school site.
And then I'm assuming administration helps determine whether or not it's actual bullying.
Correct.
But again, if someone has the tendency to make that claim over and over again,
Sure.
is there...
Sure, we deal with that just like we deal with any other false reporting, or because there's a root cause to it, right? Something's going on that somebody feels some sort of way. So it's important that we have those conversations with children and families so that we can help to resolve them.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Member Gray?
I always say I'm done, but there's one more. And I know the board members don't have their student code of conduct with them, but I do. And because this is all about our code of conduct, on page 39, which you don't have it with you, but there is a section where it has social media disruption, right? So why don't we put the procedure that is here in the policy into the student code of conduct? Because the student code of conduct is all about procedure, all right? And then instead of having in a policy, put it in a procedural content. That's what I was looking at this morning, because I think that's where it's better housed in. And Superintendent Ayers?
Yeah, I would just add, I think that procedures, like I mentioned earlier, are not part of a normal policy. However, if it's the board's will, and we'll do it as the board desires, to be strict upon our procedures and what to ensure that we follow, I think that's why back in 2014, this is when a lot of those conversations were happening, the board at the time, I feel, put the procedures in there to ensure that staff was following procedurally what they were supposed to be doing. We're going to follow these procedures regardless. Honestly, our way of work, Sue and her team are going to follow the procedures, whether it's here or it's not. We're going to do our part. So it's up to, and I just would fall back to Mr. Porter to decide what.
I do think
either way.
Some law, statute, something with DOE policy that we.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So this is a model DOE policy. We're required to have a model DOE policy. So I think we'll take all the comments. We'll work with Ms. Burkett to make sure that we're still going to be in compliance with what the DOE requires. And that might be the reason why that was put in there in the first place.
Okay.
But we'll look at that.
And I'm not opposed to putting it in 1, 2, 3, 4 documents because it's a huge concern. That's not my question. My question now is, can we not put the procedure in the student code of conduct, because that's where it should be housed. And I think there's not a disagreement with that because that's our way of work. So that would be my suggestion. And Member Vaughn, I have no opposition in putting such importance of these matters in policy. I don't care how many pages it is. It's not my concern. My concern is it's just the safety of our children, and their parents need to see it as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? I also just wanted to thank you for adding non-school, because we're seeing more and more, occurrences outside of school that are impact inside the school. So I appreciate you doing that. I think that's very, very important. Any other comments? Okay, Member Rendon?
I think, Member Vaughn, you've got a valid point. You constantly refer people to the policies, and so do I. I think maybe that's something we could look at, Superintendent Ayers and Mr. Porter, that we actually house where our policies are housed. We also include employee handbooks, student handbooks. So when there's a place we could all go to look, and so then we're not concerned if something is merged or not merged, because I think we are the examples, and we're going to train the behavior of others. I will tell you personally, I have an issue with my own daughter's high school where I've got a parent that constantly puts it on a website, the bulletin. Well, then if she doesn't do that on a Sunday, that parent that was always relying on that on Facebook never got the bulletin because they never had to follow up with it. And so I think we have to be the ones to kind of make sure our parents know exactly where we all fall in line and where things are put purposefully. So if we do things correctly, then we can refer them, but it's our responsibility to make sure they have access. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of the problem. They don't know where to go to find student code of conduct or employee code of conduct and then the policies. And so if we at least house them in local areas, they can be able to access them both. And if we refer to them in policy, it's right there for them to go to. I think that's important. I think that's something we should look into. And I think I've had conversations with staff a lot over the year where is that? I've searched the website, I can't find it. So I think that's where you're looking at. It's important to make sure families have access.
Thank you, Member Rendon. Member Gray?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something in both respect to Member Rendon and Member Vaughn. We know that we cannot afford to we have to over-communicate. If anything, the more we communicate, the better this district is. So getting back to both of the flavors that you're offering, yes, we need to put this, and further, we need to address, and this is a later conversation, but we are having a big discipline crisis. I don't have to tell you, but it's a lot of management. So that concludes my remarks. But yeah, over communication I think is probably in order.
Okay. Thank you, board members, and we are doing quite well. We are up to policy number 5600, which is student behavior management. And we have about 7 minutes or so remaining. Any questions or comments on that?
Oh,
yes. Okay. Member Gray?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out again, this is the emblematic phrase, Ms. Burkett, line 29, again in red, that you have chosen or someone has chosen to include, including consequences defined in the Student Code of Conduct. And I think that's what we were sharing also. So, and in your subsequent policies that's there. And I think that's really important because that's another communication device. Incentive for parents. Thank you.
I think it will be super easy to add a hyperlink when we put it online so that all these things that we reference, to your point, that parents can just click on it and go to those places to find the information. So,
in order to make sure that we make sure we're up to state law and statute, I am going to skip right now to 8415, and then we will go back to 5610. So if you can move to 8415, because we want to make sure the language and changes required from the 2023 session and state board rule are in compliance. So 8415, which is student support and federal programs operations. So we want to look at that. Board members, if you'd like to comment on that.
Mr. Michael Keller was, okay. Maybe Tracy will come on up because I know we had Michael Kelleher here for us. Okay.
8415. And then we'll go back to 5610 after that. Maybe.
Well, I guess for the moment we can.
Are there any questions or comments regarding the new state law, state statute surrounding 8415? Board members? Okay.
Just to make sure I'm clarifying correctly about 8414, we are talking about not just a threat, but an internal threat as well. Like, so someone that could be in possible crisis, a possible Baker Act on top of any other kind of threat. Am I correct?
Press the button. Thank you.
Yes, it could be any type of threat. The state has come out with some clear definitions of what is a threat to others versus threat to self. We've always had threat assessment policies in our district. We've been very strong with that. The state, in my opinion, the state of Florida is one of the better states in the country as far as backing up those policies with rules and laws with that. So with this model, they make it very clear on what is a threat. The focus is much more preventative in this model also, focusing on concerning behaviors and trying to intervene with students early. Because in education, we see students so much of the day that we can identify those behaviors and provide those interventions, whether it's behavioral interventions, mental health interventions, at an earlier, so we don't even get to the point of a threat.
One of my other just quick questions, and I don't know if I want to, like, if this is really defined procedurally or policy-wise, because here within our district, I think we do a very good job when a threat is actually determined of self or others, not necessarily a threat that we would consider coming in from outside or but an individual that is a potential Baker Act. We do an excellent job of pulling in our outside resources to providing that determination. And then again, we pull in those existing outside resources with our crisis, with the crisis center, so that we are not stigmatizing a child that needs to have those services, that requires that mental health services. But I didn't see that in there, and I don't know if we need to really define that as policy or procedure. Because as a district, it is our policy to do those things, to pull those outside resources in and then pull in the crisis center and not pull in law enforcement when not necessary. And so I think we should take pride in that and have that as part of our policy. But Superintendent Ayers, I don't know how you feel about that, because it's kind of like it's not necessarily a procedure, but it is how we are handling things as a district.
Now, another policy we do have is our suicide prevention policy.
Correct.
And in that policy, we refer, because with state statute, we do talk about mobile response teams, which is what you're referring to with Grace Point. And in that specific policy, it does have some of that state language that's in there. So I think that when reviewing that suicide prevention policy, it's pretty strong with that language. In the threat management piece, we do typically, there's those the core four is what they call them in the state. So it's a broad looking at law enforcement, but you have the mental health, you have administration, and instruction. So you really get the full picture of that student, whether there's any potential harm to other students or the campus. So I think that with both of those strong policies and our teams working together, I think it's a really robust kind of look at the whole child and the preventative services we provide.
And I would agree on that. I think we leave out of this policy and the two alternatives. We will have some threats that may require law enforcement, but we also may have some threats that may not and may require more of a crisis team. So I don't see that as two options on here. And so could we review that and see where we could put that in? Do you see where I'm coming from with that?
Yep.
Again, because I think those threats do go two different ways, and I don't know if we address that here as part of our policy on how we would handle that. So if we could look at just to do a double check, just a double take and review on that. I want to make sure that, and I know our goal is as a district to safeguard the children. At the end of the day, we don't want to stigmatize children. We want to get them the support they need, but we also want to keep our kids safe. So I don't see here where we would have those two options, and so I just want to make sure that we're looking at both options.
Very good. Yes.
Thank you, Member Rendon. Member Vaughn?
I just have a quick question. Have these teams already been assembled, or is this waiting upon our approval?
No, so this is not new, really, especially those core four have been in statute for quite a while. There's a few additions in some of the terminology, like, for example,
Like the chair and vice chair?
are new. Okay, so starting January 1, those will be in effect.
That's what
for
my
the
question
state.
was.
So that's why, it's so important that we brought this to you before that January 1 deadline.
So have our principals already selected and identified those, and they're just waiting in place till January 1 for
Correct.
that
We're-
structure?
Yes,
Okay.
we're currently training all the staff
Okay.
for January 1.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up because it's 12 o'clock. We do have 6 more policies remaining that we will review. That will be on November 9th. That is an open workshop date. I just want to remind board members that is on a Thursday because we will be coming back from our legislative priorities going to Tallahassee. So that meeting will be on a Thursday. It will be 6 policies. I think we can pretty much quickly go through that. I thought about going through it today, but I know some people have appointments, and I hate to drop that. But, any other questions or comments? Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.